Hey, what's up everyone? I'm Jakejames Lugo and welcome to my channel. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to all of you out there. Hopefully you guys are having some great times for the holiday season, drinking some eggnog, playing some games, eating some good desserts, all that jazz. So for the holiday season, I wanted to give you guys a cool Christmas present with a game I've wanted to review for quite some time. It's a classic that everybody knows about, as you guys could see from the title. So is The Legend of Zelda on NES still a classic, the one that laid the foundation for such a legendary franchise, or is it still utter crap? Well, let's find out together in my full review of The Legend of Zelda on NES. The Legend of Zelda was released for the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1987, but it originally came out in Japan a year earlier for the Famicom. It was from the creative ideas of Shigeru Miyamoto that an entirely new concept for an action-adventure game helped spawn a franchise that would eventually reach epic levels of popularity. The NES has always been known to have a lot of great platformers, so the first Zelda title was a real departure from the norm. The Legend of Zelda as originally intended was all about exploration, being able to go to places and just have a look around to see what was there. If you were lucky and observant enough, you could stumble into a dungeon or discover a hidden goodie among the leaves. Miyamoto described this concept coming from his childhood exploring the woods near his home. As primitive as the NES might be now, the fundamental concept for the game still shines through beautifully. But what about the ongoing story that we've come to know throughout the years? Where's Ganondorf or Impa, or anything else that showed up in later games? For the ill-informed or the uninitiated, the first Zelda game is rather slim on story beats, despite having a plot crawl during the game's demo. Much of the story for Zelda comes from the game's manual or other material released afterwards, but the basics of it are this. In the Kingdom of Hyrule, the evil Ganon steals the Triforce of Power and brings chaos to everyone. In an attempt to stop him, Princess Zelda of Hyrule shatters and hides the Triforce of Wisdom from Ganon, hoping it would stop him from taking over. As Zelda is kidnapped by Ganon, her nursemaid Impa searches for someone with enough courage to stand up to Ganon and save Hyrule. This is when she comes across Link, a young boy living in Hyrule who rescues her from Ganon's henchmen. After some convincing, Link sets out on an epic and legendary quest that would have him searching for the Triforce of Wisdom and facing Ganon for the fate of Hyrule. It really is an epic setup to what would eventually become a legendary series for Nintendo fans for years to come. A lot of the charm for Zelda on the NES really comes from all the simplicity injected into a lot of the game's design choices. From the characters, the land of Hyrule, the different enemies you run into, the gameplay itself, there's a lot of simplicity at work here. But it overall works to the game's benefit, and it really kind of conveys a lot of the simple concepts and the themes of exploration and adventure that you really kind of got a little bit more complicated in other future Zelda games. But here, this lays out the groundwork and the foundation for the entire franchise, and I still think that type of stuff really still holds up to this day. Now, one thing I do want to comment on is obviously the music. It's some of the most iconic video game music of all time. It sticks with you. The overworld theme, which is really the Hyrule theme to Zelda, is something that, again, has really gravitated and changed over the years, but still, you remember that theme song, it sticks with you, kind of like the Super Mario Bros. Theme song that you constantly hear all the time. There's other pieces of music in Zelda NES, like there's a couple themes and a couple pieces of music you can find in the dungeons and in certain areas, but really, it's the overworld theme that sticks with you constantly, because you hear it the most, it sounds great, it sounds fantastic, and it's one of those themes that just gets so easily identified with Zelda. But of course, we play games like this not just because of the story or the way that things look or sound, we play games like this because of their gameplay. And to be totally honest with you guys, I still think that Zelda on the NES still holds up even today. The Legend of Zelda on NES is the most basic of all the Zelda titles. The game is more about traversing your surroundings as you search for the Triforce, but because it was made on the NES, Zelda is both ambitious and restricted by its own design. Controlling Link and battling enemies is super easy, as is finding items and using them in different ways, but it's missing a sense of direction, which makes The Legend of Zelda difficult for some people. The map of Hyrule is large and filled with many places to visit, but you're dropped into the world without any idea of what to do next. You kinda have to wing it as you go. This is what we like to call a Nintendo Power game, because people would have to go read Nintendo Power in order to find out how to complete it. Nothing on your map indicates where dungeons or places of interest are located. Unless you had the map that came with the game's box, you'd be pretty lost on your own. Using a guide is absolutely necessary when playing this game, but there's nothing inherently wrong with that. There's a total of 9 dungeons on the overworld map, which you can visit in any order, provided you have the right tools to reach them. This is where the open-ended nature of Zelda stands out. You could go to the first few dungeons in any order before you'll need to plan out where to visit to get certain tools and items. You'll have a lot of trouble entering the 5th or 6th dungeons without the use of a blue candle to light up rooms. The same goes for reaching others without having a raft or a ladder on hand to get around certain obstacles. The game has a lot of moments like this that eventually force you into a certain direction. At some point, you'll have to explore with a purpose, but the point is, no matter how you do so, you're definitely exploring Hyrule pretty thoroughly. I really can't overstate just how much you need a guide in order to get through The Legend of Zelda on the NES. The main reason being is because back then when Zelda was developed, they really didn't have a lot to work with the hardware of the NES or the Famicom. Things just, again, from the mid to late 80s, you had to work with what you had to work with, and the developers had to come up with clever ideas to still get this information out to players, whether it was through the manual or through other supplemental material, when you just couldn't put it in the game itself. Now, obviously, with later iterations of the Zelda franchise, new entries and sequels, and also better Nintendo consoles, things changed up and got a little bit more complex, and the developers could put more information in the game itself. They could kind of guide the player through the experience, rather than just making it so super open-ended and kind of just drop you into the middle of things. But even if you have to use a guide to get through the game, that doesn't inherently make Zelda a bad game on the NES. That doesn't take away from a lot of the good that this game provides to the player. There are other games in the NES library that you had to go get Nintendo Power or go get some other guide in order to get through them. Simon's Quest for the Castlevania series being one of them, but still there was a lot of other things at work that once you had an idea of where to go, the game got a lot more fun, got a lot more interesting for you. Now, getting back to the gameplay itself, as far as the dungeons themselves and as far as the boss fights that you run into at the end of those dungeons, they're not that bad. Again, the game is very simple. You just have your sword or the items that you have available to you to get through all the different obstacles. It could get a little bit annoying towards the middle of the game, like I want to say about dungeon 5, 6, maybe 7, when you have to kind of double check to make sure you're getting all the keys that you need to get, but the game still has enough resources available to you if you're able to find them through the use of a guide to be able to get through those types of challenges. The bosses themselves aren't that bad, and some of them have become really iconic for the series later on, and even got reimagined and remixed for later entries of the series like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, I would even say Twilight Princess. There's a couple different bosses from the original Zelda game that got cool redesigns in later games that really stuck with people, myself included. As far as their difficulty in the dungeons themselves, if you're able to get the sword upgrades or some of the shield upgrades and maybe get bombs and other things here and there, they're really not that bad. You could breeze through them pretty easily if you know exactly what you're doing. Now, one of the big things with the game like Zelda that has a hard emphasis on exploration is all the secrets and hidden stuff that you could find. There is a ton of secrets and bonuses you could find scattered throughout Hyrule, all of which are incredibly helpful throughout your journey. You won't have any idea where to find them, however, without a guide. There's no way you'll know exactly which bush to burn in order to find a hidden stairway to another heart container without some help. Outside of that, the game isn't very difficult once you have a sense of what to do, but that doesn't mean that it isn't challenging in other ways. You'll be fighting many of Ganon's minions, all of which have become almost iconic these days. Each dungeon also has a boss that you must defeat, which yields a heart container to increase your health and a piece of the Triforce. Once you have all the pieces, you can enter the final area and face Ganon in a final battle. Provided you have all the necessary items and upgrades beforehand, you won't have a hard time against the giant pig himself. You just have to smack him around a few times. Is the payoff really worth it though? It actually is, believe it or not, and it doesn't take forever to do so. You could finish The Legend of Zelda in about 9 hours or so, maybe a little bit more if you make the effort to get everything hidden in the game. You don't need to discover every hidden secret in order to get to the end, but it definitely adds a lot of replayability to an already big game, just like Miyamoto had intended. Now, there is a second quest to The Legend of Zelda on NES once you beat the game the first time. You could also access that from the very get-go by typing Zelda as your main name when you first start playing, but even so, there's really not much different to it. It's still essentially the same adventure. The only main difference is that certain items are misplaced in different areas, the enemies are a lot harder, some of the dungeons are a little bit remixed, but not too much. It's essentially the exact same game. It would have been cool to actually get like a bonus windscreen or maybe an alternate ending or something else. I know this was possible on the NES because other games like Simon's Quest for Castlevania had did something similar depending on how you played the game. But even with all that being said, even if you just play The Legend of Zelda one time just straight through like that, I feel like you're going to get a satisfying experience, provided again if you're playing with a guide. It's very surreal going back and playing this game on the NES when we have so many other games and kind of sequels to the Zelda series, with all the different stuff that's changed throughout the years, when all that stuff and some of the big staples of Zelda really started out here in this game. It's really cool just to see that evolution. I mean, look at the clash between Ganondorf or Ganon and Link, and the way that that's kind of played out throughout all the years for all these different Zelda games, including Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, Twilight Princess, Spirit Tracks, Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass. The list goes on. It's absolutely insane. So after everything that I've said, do I recommend that you guys go back and play the original Legend of Zelda on the NES? Without question, yeah, you guys definitely need to play this game when you can. I feel like this is a must-play game for anybody out there, even if you're not a big Zelda fan, or even if you're not a big Nintendo fan. If you're just someone that loves the action-adventure genre and you love games that are very similar to this, you definitely need to play it. But if you're a Zelda fan, I feel like going back and playing the original Legend of Zelda will give you a greater appreciation of what we got in later entries of the series. This game laid the groundwork for a legendary franchise and has remained relevant for 25 to nearly 30 years. It's something awesome to see within our industry, and I'm pretty sure over the years to come, there's going to be even greater and more fun adventures within the land of Hyrule. Anyway, guys, those are my overall thoughts about the original Legend of Zelda on the NES. Again, there's so much that's already been said about this game, it's kind of hard to figure out what else to say about it that hasn't already been said at this point, but we love talking about games like this, especially ones that have done so much for the industry, that have done so much for big franchises like Zelda. It's just, again, it's a fun thing and a fun topic to really dive into. But those are just my thoughts about the original Legend of Zelda. Let me know what you guys think about Zelda and the entire franchise, and even this game, down below in the comments section. Tell me some of your favorite Legend of Zelda games. Tell me your own thoughts about the original Legend of Zelda. What do you want to see happen with the Zelda franchise moving forward now that we've already gotten games like Breath of the Wild? Put all that stuff down below in the comments section. Before I go, I want to wish everybody out there happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and all that other jazz. Hopefully you guys enjoy the video games that you get under the tree, and I will see you guys again very soon. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. Go ahead and click the boxes on the side to see more videos and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to go visit my Patreon page for exclusive gaming content that I know you'll really love. Hope you have a chill day. Peace out and stay epic, everybody.